Welcome to another podcast of the Go Rhody podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brand. Today, I'm joined by David Berov of the Eye of the Storm podcast. He's the St. John's leading authority. We're going to be talking today about Rhody's latest transfer, Drissa Traore. How did I do with that? It's a tricky name. Drissa or Drizza?
Drissa Traore.
Drissa. Okay.
Yes.
It's
Special
hard.
place in St. John's fans' hearts, number 55. And you guys are getting a good kid and I think somebody that is going to reach his potential with you guys.
I like how you put that because we don't know what to do with his stats. If you look at his stats, we can't get too excited. I was less than enthused at first, and then I started digging and talking to the fans, and everyone just speaks so highly of him. And you go in the New York Post articles, and he's the class pet from Rick Pitino, one of the only holdovers after the transfer of coaches. So 1 point a game, one rebound. He's got pretty good three-point shooting, a small sample size. Tell me what we don't know about Drissa.
So let's start here. St. John's, when Rick Pitino came in last year, he wiped the slate clean and he had to get rid of some bad apples, some guys with character issues, and he got bad reports from assistant coaches, people around the programs on a lot of the kids who he basically said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm bringing in my own guys. He kept two people. One was Joel Soriano, who played like an All-American center for the first half of the season and was the cornerstone piece for his class. The other guy was Drissa. And to me, that says a lot. And I think that while a lot of fans might not be that impressed with the box scores, there's reasons for that. And I understand that when you just look at it on the surface. But you want to bring in high character kids. You want to bring in guys who you can root for, and you want to bring in guys who you know are going to fit within your program. Archie Miller has a tough job to do at URI. It is a competition in that area with Providence and with a lot of other big schools. And, when you are looking for who is going to fit into that puzzle, sometimes you don't get the 5-star, 4-star kids. You have to look at somebody like a Drissa Traore, who did come from a powerhouse program in New York, in Lehigh, coached by the absolute best coach you could possibly get out there in John Buck. He is putting together an absolute titan of a program and has for many years. And Drissa was a part of that. A team that won the New York State Federation title with Drissa on that team. Listen, he is 6'8", 215, but he is a great person. He is a hustle guy. He is a great piece to a team. And what we saw this year from Drissa was a development. Now, there wasn't a ton of it because, St. John's had a lot of older guys. They had guys that were, at least two guys at his position in Chris Ledlam and Zuby Ejiofor. But Drissa, for the first half of the season, about first 12 games or so, was getting extended minutes, about 8 to 10 minutes a game, and was producing in those games. So I think that when you now use the transfer portal for good, and a lot of people will say the transfer portal is, pay for play or whatnot. And a lot of people don't like it and don't want to keep up with it because of how difficult it is. But in this case, for Drissa, I think it's the benefit of the transfer portal and the benefit for Archie Miller and the benefit for URI, because you're going to get a kid who has for 2 years basically been waiting his turn, has developed, especially in the last year, going through player development sessions by Rick Pitino, which he is world famous for. And now he's going to bring that to Rhode Island. And I think that that is something that is really something to hang your head on and be excited about, because he hasn't scratched the surface yet of what he can do. And I think even St. John's fans don't know exactly what he's fully capable of, but we have seen spurts, and what we have seen is the hustle never stops. The energy never stops. He's the consummate teammate you can have. And this year he showed that he can hit the three. He shows that he can rebound the ball really well, and he can show, and he did show that he can play inside and outside on the perimeter in the paint. And you like that kind of versatility.
Yeah, those are all the things we need. And our biggest flaw was we didn't have that character player. In the past, we've had these TJ Buchanans who are very similar to Drissa, who played hard every play. We had a lot of people taking off on plays, and we need something contagious that sounds like Drissa can do. Reading all the articles in the New York Post and the way Rick Pitino talks about him is just phenomenal. And if you understand our team right now, we do need someone of his size. Do you think he could move, since he's coming from the Big East? Shouldn't it be easier for him to make that transition into the Atlantic 10, which obviously doesn't have the same talent as the Big East, and possibly surprise? And right now, I think the expectation is low. He's just here to just be a cheerleader, come in, get some minutes, play a little defense. If he gets a basket, it's a bar. So we're wrong
No,
about that.
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think that the point that you make is actually what's going to lend to the success and why a guy like Drissa Traore makes a lot of sense going to the A10. I mentioned before, the transfer portal is something that most fans, heck, a lot of coaches are getting tired of and don't even want to keep up with. But when somebody like this, and I'll put it in air quotes, transfers down to from a Big East to an A10, there's reasons for it. Obviously, Drissa is going into his junior year and he
Mhm.
redshirted his
Yes.
his freshman year. So he's got still time left, but he wants to make the most of his time and now he wants minutes and he wants his opportunity. He's going to get that at URI. He's also going down a conference level where he's going up against perhaps not as much physicality as there is in the Big East, perhaps not as many 4 and 5 star kids. You got the Yukons and the Marquettes and the Creightons and the Providences of the world. It's a gauntlet every single night in the Big East. Now, that's not to poo-poo the A10, but the
No.
fact is that the competition level is a step down, but that can only benefit a player like Drissa, who has been through the Big East now for 3 years. Even though he did redshirt one of the years, he was still going through practices. He was still with the team. He was learning and he was developed. And listen, the last year with St. John's, Driscoll put on about 15 pounds or so
Wow.
of muscle. He got bigger. So he's bringing all of that to now the A10, which I think can only benefit him. I think that he's going to be a really solid piece for Archie. I'm not super familiar with the full makeup of URI at the moment, but
Yeah.
when you bring in a guy from that kind of a conference to the A10, I do think that it's with the plan to get him extended minutes. Now, what that is for URI, it could be 15, it could be 18 minutes, it could be more. It depends. But I do know that Drissa did shoot 40% from three, albeit on a small sample size, and it was only
Hmm.
17 attempts. But he was confident in that shot. It was something that Rick Pitino helped develop with him. He can rebound the ball extremely well, and he is not somebody that ever gets tired. So you can run him, and I think that that kind of infectious energy permeates through an entire roster. And I think that it only benefits him when he's going to be on the court. And I think Archie is going to see that.
And he was a three-star recruit from Long Island Lutheran, so he's not someone who was coming in as a second thought. He was up in the mix with all the other players coming into St.
Yep.
John's at the
He was
time.
actually the first recruit for Mike Anderson in the 2021 class. That's what actually started it off. And Blue High, again, like I mentioned, a powerhouse of a program in high school basketball, not just in New York, but
Yeah.
for the URI fans to know what kind of pedigree he's coming from. And something that I think is important and why I'm bringing up Lehigh is Coach John Buck is somebody that is revered in college basketball at the moment. And he is the reason, actually the second reason why Drissa's energy and all that comes from, because he instilled that in Drissa, and Drissa actually credits his father for for the first part of that. But the second part of that comes from John Buck, and they instilled that in high school. And if you could make one player better with your energy, if you could pick one guy up, if you can just impact the game in that way, you'll always one have a spot, but two, you'll always know that you're doing something positive for the team. And that's just something that Van Macon, assistant coach for St. John's, has echoed. It's something that Rick Pitino has echoed about Drissa. And, Rick Pitino even said, quote, you need one, two, three of those types of players on a basketball team. Drissa is the consummate culture person. It's all about the team, whether he gets in or he doesn't. He's going to be the best cheerleader on the bench. Now, I know for fans, we don't really care about being a cheerleader on the bench. But again, Scott, you just mentioned that it's important to get culture guys.
Yes.
You're not going to get a better one in college basketball than Drissa Traore, period. End of story.
Yeah, and when you talk about him, we had a little controversy today on Twitter, wouldn't you say, from a Rhode Island fan, and he compared. And I'm sure you don't know Will Leviton, but he was a walk-on,
Mhm.
and I welcome that comparison. Will Leviton was another high character guy. Now he doesn't have the talent that Drissa has, but this fan didn't understand that just because his stats aren't that high, he was selected to stay on a team. And that's a big statement for Rick Pitino, who kind of cleaned house, as you're saying. So
Right.
it means a lot when Rick Pitino keeps you one of two. And we do know Joel Soriano because he played for Fordham and he was a star.
Yeah.
So that I knew he would be a great get, and I was just waiting for him to do what he did the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I think it's unfair to characterize kids like that. I get it. I do understand on the surface like where that's coming from. You look at the box scores, you look at his production, you see the end of the season. He didn't really get into the games much, but St. John's was trying to make the NCAA tournament at the end of the year. He was playing behind two other power forwards who were getting big minutes, and there just wasn't that much time for him. But that's the reason why he entered the transfer portal, is that he does want to showcase himself. He wants the 15, 20 minutes a game. And I don't think that somebody like that would, quote unquote, leave Rick Pitino and St. John's for no reason. He's going because he knows he can offer more. And obviously, Archie Miller and the staff at Rhode Island agreed. I think that when you look at, eh, you know, this example is for the NBA often, and it's a hot topic right now. Somebody like Bronny James with the NBA draft, or just a lot of these guys in the NBA draft. The NBA draft and going into the NBA is all about potential. A lot of these guys are projected to do X, Y, and Z. The transfer portal in a lot of ways can work similarly, where you as a staff are looking at what this player could be in your system and how you can utilize him. And so I fully believe that Archie Miller and the staff at Rhode Island have seen how Drissa was developed, where he can fit into this team, and they're going to amplify his minutes in order to bring all that out. And I think that, again, my point that I'm going to keep hammering home is that this is the positive part of the transfer portal. And I think that just looking at it on the surface of the stats is misleading. And we've seen the kind of kid that he is, and we've seen glimpses and spurts of how he's developed over the last 2 years. And it's there. And I'm certainly going to keep tabs on Drissa the entire year at Rhode Island.
He seemed like a fan favorite too, because when
For
I was
sure.
talking to people, they immediately, I was just trying to find out about them, and they gravitated to him, and they wanted to find a person for me to interview, and I was lucky to find you because they have such a strong affinity to him. Why is he such a player that fans gravitate to? Not
It
just
just comes from
Will.
that character. It comes from that character. It's you could see it. It's not fake. This guy, they like to talk about leaders of the bench mob sometimes. The guys who are sometimes towards the ends of the bench, but we've seen guys like that just sit there and sulk. They're not the first guys up that shake the players' hands or give the towels. Little things like that, and you might make fun of somebody for that. Ah, you're a bench warmer, but no, that's high end character stuff. There's there's plenty of guys that would sit there and bite their lip and be upset if they're not coming into the games. But, it shows a lot of character that you're up and cheering for your teams and you're the highest energy guy. And it, that stuff matters. If you ask any single teammate of Drissa Traore's from Lehigh and through St. John's of last year, they will all say the same thing, is that he's the absolute best teammate. He is the best guy to be around. He picks everybody up. And that gets picked up by the fans. We've got one of our
Mm.
notorious fans from Canada who, he comes down here and, he catches a few games every year, but he only bought one player's jersey and it was
Really?
Drissa's. And it was Drissa's, and he will proudly wear Drissa's jersey. And that's the kind of kid that he is, and that's the kind of impact that he had on a lot of people. They liked when he came into the games. They loved it when he started hitting threes this year. It was like, holy cow, look at what he's doing. You start feeling good for those kind of kids. And again, I get it, the comparison to a potential walk on, because you kind of have some those kind of similar feelings, but I think Drissa's talent is far beyond that. And again, I'm super excited to see what he's going to do in a much larger role at URI.
Well, one thing about Archie Miller is in his recruiting, we're learning that he's very stealth. Like, we don't know how this happened. Do you have any inside information or what role Rick Pitino played, or how did we even find someone from St. John's? Where's the connection there? We're in the DMV all the time. Does it
So
hang out?
I am sure that phone calls were made and plenty of people gave the okay for Drissa in regards to what they are getting. I know that there was a few other teams that were sniffing around that wanted his services, and a lot of local teams. There was Stony Brook and there was Hofstra and a handful of others. But at the end of the day, listen, you guys were the girl that he said yes to, and you guys just got Jamarcus Lawrence as well, who came over from Nebraska. I did a little digging
Yes.
and I asked around. So, from what I understand, Jamarcus is coming into URI as a very similar definition, like Drissa, a very high character guy. But what I found out is Lawrence was actually one of the better players in New Jersey. And
Yes.
he scored 800 points by his sophomore year in New Jersey. And I spoke to a source today who is so excited that he's going to be getting his shot at URI that he thinks that he's going to be first team all A10.
Wow.
He thinks that he is going to be a guard that absolutely takes over. And the source told me that a bunch of A10 coaches called him and was asking around where he was going to go and were less than pleased when he actually ended up in the A10 with URI. He's a difference maker. He is one at Nebraska this year, so he is bringing that kind of culture to URI. And I think that that's going to be something that the Rhode Island fans are going to be really excited. So you're getting two local kids from the tri-state area in Jamarcus with some New
Mhm.
Jersey ties, and Drissa's got the New York ties. So you're getting some East Coast flavor going into Rhode Island.
Also, Drissa is coming from that environment as well with Rick Pitino. So that's another plus. He's had 2 years or 1 year with one of the great coaching minds and player development coaches. How is he on the foul line? Because we're suffered. We were one of the worst foul shooting teams in the nation, and it really was. Even if we played better, that was still going to be our Achilles heel, and we lost tons of game because of that.
Yeah, I mean, Drissa doesn't really shoot too many free throws. He
Yeah.
shot 30% last year. I
Ooh.
believe he only shot, I don't know, he shot maybe 10 free throws all year. So again, small sample size. It's kind of
Yeah.
tough to really extrapolate much from that. I wouldn't go too crazy about that. The biggest encouragement, honestly, for me was how much his body got stronger last year. And the 3-point shot really was something that was impressive to see. There was a game against Fordham where he hit multiple, and
Yeah.
it's it kind of gives you a glimpse of what you can see. And for a guy that played, 3 to 10 minutes a game, if you start extrapolating that over 17, 18, 19, 20 minutes, you hope to double, triple that kind of production. And, I could see a world where Drissa is an 8.7 rebound type of a guy. And I think that that's a really solid piece in college basketball.
Well, we have a power forward now, David Green, and we need someone to come off the bench at power forward. Is he pretty much a true power forward, if you would say? Or,
Yeah, I would say that he is more comfortable being a face up four, at 6'8",
Mhm.
220. I think that that is probably the best role for him. He's definitely got the size. He's physical. He's not afraid to mix it up in the paint. So I think that he definitely is of that ilk. I think that he's quick enough that he can guard the three as well. Uh, if you really want to play small and put him at the five, I think that's not really his strong suit. But
Mhm.
I think that you could see him switch on to like a small forward and you wouldn't have too many issues on the defensive end. So in that 3-4 spot, but I would keep him as a face up four.
Yeah, that was a question from one of the fans if he could play the five because we still haven't been able to get a backup center. We have a great freshman coming back, David Fuchs, who defensively we think he could get better, but we were definitely defensive challenged last year. And with Drissa, he seems like a very good defensive player, but and
Mhm.
that's just as important as his offense. Uh, if you watched our games, it was really hard. We lost games by giving up 94 points on our home court. So we need more people like Drissa, and I
Yeah.
think that will be very helpful. If you could compare him to a professional player, who would you compare him to? Is it
Scott,
really hard?
I was I had a feeling you were going to ask this
Oh,
question,
really?
and
Yeah, it's
and
a
I swear to
lazy
you,
question.
I was sitting at my desk and I was wondering who I would compare him to, because I don't have an answer for you. I don't want to throw a name out there. I think that what you just said in regards to needing guys for defense, one of the biggest things with defense is not having that off switch and not taking plays off. And I can tell you that Drissa is that guy, and he is going to establish that in practice, and he's going to establish that in games, and that is the mark of a great player and a great fit for any kind of a team. Because if you ask any coach, they want the guys who are going to buy into the defense, and I think you're going to get that with Drissa.
Well, I think you've just made a lot of fans excited about this, and me myself, I underestimated him. And once I started reaching out to the St. John's fans and having you on today, I have a completely different opinion. I think you shed a lot of optimism for Rhody Nation coming on, and I think we should keep an open mind about him. We do need someone to come off the bench, and we need more than just someone who will play hard and doesn't have the upside to score the ball, hit the threes. He's not a shot blocker, is he?
He's
That's
blocked a few shots. I mean, I think
not.
that that's going to just come with more playing time for him
Mhm.
because he is pretty hard nosed on defense. He did have a propensity a few times to get into some bad foul trouble early on, but I think a lot of that just is about getting comfortable and getting more minutes and acclimating to a system. I think that when you have that kind of energy and when you're relentless on defense, a lot of that stuff is going to come with the time on the court, the blocks, the steals, deflections, taking charges. He's absolutely going to be that kind of guy, and he's somebody that knows how to score in the paint. And he knows how to play on the paint on both ways, and I think that he's going to be quite comfortable with you guys. And Rhode Island fans, you're going to see a lot of St. John's fans on social media in your mentions because we are going to be rooting for Drissa and we are going to be cheering him on. So when you see all that red flying in, that's us rooting for him for sure.
Well, I definitely feel stronger for St. John just by the reaction they have, and they're living vicariously off of him right now. I think that says a lot. And
You know,
thanks for that bonus coverage. I wasn't expecting that, and I
I'm
know
here
you
to.
have sources, so you were sleuthing, as you say.
I
But
got
once
some
again,
friends. Yeah.
thank you. And I always end it by saying, when it comes to Rhody basketball, it's always go Drissa. No, go Rhody. Sorry about that. Thanks again, David, and good luck this year as long as you're not playing against Rhody and you're not. So we'll be rooting for you. Thanks again.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.